Díochaí bhcáirde agus fáilte romh chuig Q&A na mísa seo. So welcome all to this month's Q&A. Now this month is a little different as we have a specific theme. And this theme is that we're answering questions that were asked in a survey aimed at those learning Irish at school. So there are so many Irish out there who studied Irish at school and would now like to return to learning it, or have already done so and want help and support along the way. And in this live stream, we hope to offer some helpful advice and support to those people who ask questions, and also to you who may be out there watching tonight and haven't submitted a question but find it's useful for you too. Mar sin céchfuil tú Emma?
Tom go bra, chun tá tú féin Siobhán?
Go maith Emma, go maith. Mar sin arailinn chuig an géad cish de socha. Let's begin with the first question. Right, let an cish sin a chuir Emma.
Kinta. So the first question comes in from Martina, and Martina is based in the UK, and she asks, could you organise weekly conversation classes? So Siobhán, cad there and two.
Good amach that's the cish, Martina. Thank you for your question. So my reply to that would be, we already have them in the sense that we have Bitesize Bio, and that's a weekly scripted conversation session where conversational Irish is both learned and practiced through reciting a scripted conversation. So there are two parts in each conversation. We have numerous conversations on different topics, let's say occupation. So we might have two people, it's Sean and Maura, speaking about their jobs or lack thereof. And also you've, let's say, family, so two people speaking about family. So everyone gets the chance through being in breakout rooms on Zoom, they get the chance to read each part. So everyone gets a chance to read Sean's part and Maura's part. So they get to be on both sides of the conversation. And therefore, even though it's scripted, they're learning what's the normal way towards sentences, talking about very common themes. And then when that's done, we all join back together into one main room, and there the main pronunciation and grammar points are looked at, and the floor is open for questions. So at the end then, everyone has the chance to answer a question in their own words that correlates with that session's topic. So let's say if it's occupation, one person might be asked what their job is, and they can reply what their job is. Someone else might be asked if they're far from work, how long does it take them to get to work or something. And everyone gets a chance, no matter how little Irish they have or how much Irish they have, and people pick up from each other as well. So that's how that works. So that is, for all intents and purposes, a conversation class, and that's held at 8 p.m. Irish time each Tuesday. So that's what that is.
Guntach. So that's available for those who are part of our Grow program, for anyone wondering, and the links are available in the description or also on our website bitesize.irish. So if you think that would be something that would suit you as a learner, maybe you want to go forward, Siobhán does a great job with Bitesize Bio, and everybody that attends those classes thoroughly enjoys them. So Guntach. Okay, so the next question is one I like. So as Siobhán said at the start, we put out a survey to those who had Irish before in school, perhaps. And Kineda, who's based in Éireann or in Ireland, says, why wasn't this survey in Irish? So Siobhán, can you tell us why?
Well, the simple reason the survey wasn't in Irish is that most of those surveyed would not have been able to understand it or answer the questions in Irish. So that's the simple explanation. And if they were able to read and reply in Irish, they would more than likely be quite proficient in Irish already. So perhaps they would be more interested in other things, or, you know, a slightly different audience perhaps. So that's simply the reason why. And that's how it is. So of course things should be written in Irish as much as possible, and but when people don't, when you're addressing learners, the learner has to understand you. So that's the main thing there.
Sinead, absolutely. So the third question then comes in from Brian in Ireland. And Brian asks, how can we make it more popular to learn Irish?
So that's a brilliant question there, Brian. An Chéiste Fad. So there's a good few answers to that, I guess, and I would say that everyone would have a different answer. So these are my opinions anyway. So I would say that it needs to be promoted culturally, and by that perhaps you're talking about a large cultural project movement, and we have had that over the past 100 years or more, through Conradh na Gaeilge, for example. It just needs to be stronger, because obviously Conradh na Gaeilge and other organisations have greatly helped, and as Irish is still there, there's still people who speak Irish. So at least, whereas there were people 100 years ago who thought that they were the last generation of Irish speakers. So it's great to see that Irish is still there today. But obviously more needs to be done. And more needs to be done to promote it culturally. And by that I mean, I guess, to make it cool, as they say, to make it trendy, that people want to speak Irish. That is what they want. Like how people want to do, maybe learn coding or something. So it depends, but you need to have it in a sense, something that attracts a lot of people, a wide range of the population, not just a niche few of the population. So it's something that would take a lot of work, and probably a very radical approach, as the approaches taken perhaps 100 years ago may not be exactly the ones most suitable to the current situation. So there's a few things to take into consideration there. Also, to be honest, I think that if there are more financial incentives, it would more than likely make a large difference, as of course people need money, people like money, it helps. And for example, in that case, if speaking Irish was seen as quite beneficial in many or most careers, more people would be interested in speaking Irish because it helps them get along in life. Similar to how I mentioned coding, for example. And there's lots of things like that people are genuinely interested in, but it also has a financial and career incentive. And they also enjoy it. So there can be a few incentives there, but I believe that would definitely have to be part of it. That's what I think anyway. And there's also the deeper question of like an ideology, what one believes, what one's values and priorities are, and that's pretty much up to every individual. But as we can see on many issues, quite often the vast majority of a population can share the same values and priorities, or the main values and priorities. And if it were that somehow people could gain the Irish language as a priority, if many Irish people, or the vast majority, so speaking Irish daily, not just now and then, not just a few words, but daily, that would make a big difference. But there's a good few things out there, and different approaches will attract different people and make it popular among different social groups and different types of people. So I think there's 101 answers to this, and many of them are more than likely correct. So it's just a very, very big project, I think, if one were to go about it on a large scale. So that's just my opinion anyway. I mean, who do me agus certain novel sin Emma?
Yeah, it's again, as you said, I agree with everything you said, Siobhán. It depends what approach you want to take, of course, you know, on the individual priorities, values, so to say, you know, perhaps a deeper understanding of what's behind the language and the history of the language and how the language, you know, learning any language can give you a different view on the world. You know, there's different constructs, there's different grammatical terms, there's different vocabulary terms that are different or normal in English, but they're something much more interesting in Irish, for example. If you talk about financial incentives, jobs, well, you know, make it more popular to learn Irish. As an Irish person in Ireland, you do learn Irish up until the age of 17, 18 in school. But jobs need to be there for those people to go on in their lives and continue learning Irish and speaking Irish and using Irish and not losing their Irish after some years because there's no job opportunities. When you have speakers, you need jobs. And given, of course, there are jobs in teaching and jobs in translation and some government body jobs, but I think there needs to be a lot more available for not only the learners going through school who wouldn't come from an all Irish speaking family or a Gaeilge background or whatever, you know, not only them, but also the people who do speak Irish daily at home and speak it as their, you know, their tongue with the family, but then have to go to work and work in an English language job because there aren't enough jobs for those who are fluent in the language. So definitely there needs to be more emphasis, or BAME as we'd say in Irish, on jobs for Irish speakers and Irish learners in general, from both Gaeltacht and non-Gaeltacht backgrounds. So both, you know, native Irish speakers and, so to say, learners of the Irish language from school age upwards. So depends on the priorities of our government. And of course, so the only thing we can really do ourselves as speakers, for example, myself and Siobhán, is spread awareness of the language, teach others, you know, go on and, you know, support the language in any way and live the language as we do ourselves as well. So yeah, that would be my opinion. And I'm sure, as Siobhán said, there's 100 other opinions and there's 100 other ways that you could go about it. But I don't think there's any wrong way or right way. Well, there's definitely wrong ways, but there's no one right way. There's plenty to be talked about.
That was a good point you made there, Emma, about like if it was the government's priority, and if the government did, I think, have this very large let's say project or aim or a very large like information, what would you call it, sort of information project, it would probably do a lot of good if it was done properly, because they would have the funding and everything, whereas most organizations don't. And of course the government can access everyone in the community, everyone in the country, whereas often groups, they'll only really, sometimes it's only certain people who come across those groups. So definitely, if that was a government priority, I could definitely see that working too. Yeah. And as you're saying there about, it's up to like myself and yourself promoting it ourselves. And if people can, to promote it within their own families, even if they don't have the opportunity to do so outside their families, that's very important too. That's the other few points I'd like to make. But an what her fad aontim let Emma. Mar sin, an chéad ceiste. Let's do the next question then. Comes from Killian in Bermuda. And his question is, I am an upper intermediate progression. I am at an upper intermediate progression level. Do you have pools of daily speakers interacting at this level, or mostly beginners? An Christer fad gur maithagad Killian. So that's a great question there. Emma.
Yeah, I think Killian asked a question that many people think. You know, we have a lot of people who are interested in learning Irish for the first time in Bitesize, but that doesn't mean that we don't have people who are proficient in Irish and would be at the same level as yourself, Gillian. So within Bitesize Pobble, I'm on there every day, and there's a great mix of learners and speakers of Irish there, which I think makes a really good dynamic group to have and community to be a part of, because you have people who have a minimal amount, you know, they started off with quite a minimal amount of Irish and are progressing quite well. I've seen people go from strength to strength within a couple of months and are now able to, you know, converse. And that goes the whole way up to people who would be quite able to share their opinions, thoughts, express ideas, have conversations as Gaeilge, ask questions, explain things as Gaeilge. And the nice thing is that it's not only just with me as the community manager on Pobble, you know, it's with one another as well. And I think the effort that people make to ask their questions and to bring those ideas forward, as Gaeilge. And if someone's not sure of a word, you know, they'll put it in brackets or they'll look it up and say, I'm not sure about that, but here we go. Correct me if I'm wrong. It makes for a really, really enjoyable experience that, you know, we're not just speaking fully in English and then trying to, you know, bring some words in as Gaeilge. People are very, very, very capable of having very well worded conversations as Gaeilge. And I think between the mix of people who are more proficient and then the people who are at more of a, you know, beginner level within the Pobble community, it brings the others along, and you drag them up with you faster than they could ever imagine or that they could ever do on their own. So it's a lovely dynamic to have. So absolutely, Cillian, you wouldn't, if you were to ever join the Grow program or Pobble, you wouldn't be the only person at upper intermediate level, for sure. Cad ceapan tusa, Siobhán, because you come in contact with everyone once a week on Bio.
Well, that was a great description, I thought, of how Pobble is. It just goes to show, it does, as Emma was describing there, it just goes to show that you really do have all sorts of levels and so much communication as Gaeilge in Irish on Pobble, not just people bickering maybe about grammar or something. It's not like that at all. It's people communicating, and of course Emma creates some like hints and gives some inspiration for communication as well, so things people can talk about. And so there's so many conversations going on, conversations people begin themselves, conversations that are more prompted. So it's brilliant, and there really are different levels of Irish on there. And I definitely see the beginners picking up loads from the more proficient, and it's brilliant to see that, and quite quickly, as you said there, Emma, quite quickly too. Mm-hmm. So it definitely works. It's a pleasure to see.
Yeah, Sinead. So yeah, if anyone is thinking about Bitesize Irish in the Grow program, more specifically in becoming a member of the community, and are maybe a bit hesitant over, you know, what level is dealt with, we cater for all levels. And you can take, I give, as Siobhán said, I give daily prompts and, you know, incentives to start a conversation. No matter what your level is, you can always contribute. You know, you can, if you've only a small bit of Irish, you can contribute what you can, and, you know, you use your dictionary, or you can up your level and keep going and develop your vocabulary and your grammar and try and make, you know, more complicated sentences, or express more, you know, further your ideas or whatever you want to say, as Gaeilge, and more than welcome. We welcome you with open arms. Okay, so the next question then comes in from George in South Africa, and George says, will Irish ever be spoken as a language of communication throughout Ireland? So, Gurmil Mahagat, George, and again, a question that not only you are wondering the answer to, I'm also wondering the answer to that. So I'll ask Siobhán on son, on her opinion. And we'll see. We're welcoming anything in the chat as well from all of you. We see you having your little conversations there. So, Siobhán, cad capan tú?
Martin Shumahoramsha. So this is my opinion. Again, similar to promoting Irish or making Irish popular in Ireland. This in many respects is a similar answer. But my opinion anyway is to that question, will Irish ever be spoken as a language of communication throughout Ireland? My answer is simply, we don't know, but it's not an impossibility. Like, as I touched on earlier, a well-done, major, well-funded, long-term project could very well do the job, though I'm sure a grassroots movement could also achieve it, though in my opinion that would be much slower and possibly wouldn't reach as much of the population as would a major project, possibly state-led. So that's the thing there. It would have to be quite large, I think, as it would have to promote Irish as a daily language or as a language of communication, if not at home, at work or somewhere, at school or something. But for all ages of the population and different types of people, different communities in Ireland, urban, rural, you name it. So it would have to entice very different people of very different ages and of very different backgrounds. So it would have to be a very major project to get a lot of the people speaking Irish as a language of communication. And I suppose that would be a majority, or at least a large amount of people in Ireland. That every single person in Ireland would speak Irish. I don't think it would happen. I don't think it would happen, as it hasn't been the case for a long, long time. But of course, it wasn't too long ago that a large proportion of the Irish population spoke Irish. So that could be reached again, I believe. I suppose it isn't impossible that everyone would have some knowledge of the Irish language. The thing there is, this isn't something that's completely new either, of course, as we've had many attempts, both large and small, over the past century, in particular, to promote Irish as a language of communication, or simply as the language to be used, and how else to use a language but to communicate. And of course, some were more successful than others, but they must have reached some success, as Irish is still there today, and there are more and more Gaeilge, for example, and there are more people who speak Irish to a certain level. It could be argued that there are fewer fluent speakers, or very, very good fluent speakers, as in people who are extremely proficient in their fluency, as could write a book or something. Perhaps those people are much less, but there are way more people who could have a basic conversation, let's say. So that is its good and its bad points, of course, but that seems to be the current situation. But it just goes to show that the Irish language movement has been a complete failure by any stretch of the imagination, even if one could criticise certain paths taken over the years, or whatever. People might criticise different ones and stuff like that. But the current interest in Gaeilge, as I mentioned, that shows that there are many interested in Irish, in the next generation being able to speak Irish to a level of fluency. And but my opinion anyway, a stronger, more radical approach would greatly increase the momentum of the current Irish language movement, and that's what will be needed to get a large portion of the population speaking Irish. And it would happen gradually, but probably not too slowly, but it would take a bit of time, because obviously it takes effort to speak Irish compared to English. If you've been born and raised in an English speaking household and you've got English all around you and everything, and on top of that, it's an international language, so it takes more effort to choose to speak Irish, even if you are fluent, because fewer people can speak Irish than English. And so it's just to get so many people to speak Irish, to make that effort, to take the harder, to make the harder choice, basically. And that's not easy to get many people to do, of course. And so that's the thing. But the more people who speak Irish, the easier the choice it is. So I'm sure it would be very, very possible if a large scale, well done project was put in place. That's my opinion anyway. Well, Ian, who me agad frí sin, Emma?
In team Siobhán, yeah, I think widespread or just Irish as the communicative language in Ireland is maybe a dream that a lot of people have, but a realistic one, I don't think so. What I would suggest and what I would think would be the best idea would be moving towards a more bilingual country or community or whatever you want to call it. Bilingualism, of course, we can't ignore the fact that English is, you know, globalization. English is the language that everybody wants, not only in Ireland. Lots and lots and lots of countries prefer to, you know, learn English as their second language. And I think, you know, realistically, if we became a country that just spoke Irish, that wouldn't work in terms of trading, business, so on and so forth, without getting into that too much. But yeah, Gaeilge Scoilne, upping the amount of children that are starting off speaking Irish at the age of 3 and 4. Like myself, I didn't come from an Irish speaking family, but I began at the age of 4 and continued on then. And I still use Irish in my daily life, in my career, in my job, in whatever way I can. I have pockets of communities, friends, certain friends I'll speak Irish with. It depends. So, you know, you switch your language depending on your social situation. Now, for me, I use Irish within my job here in Bitesize. Le Siobhán agus le Owen. I use Irish with my students that I teach, and I also use Irish with some of my friends that I have, with my previous teachers actually also, and some of my friends that I have studied Irish with in university and school. But I would love if my, I suppose, social situations would get a bit bigger, you know, so the option that, you know, when I go to my local cafe, that's where I speak Irish as well, because I know that the barista and the girl behind the counter can speak Gaeilge, and then that might move on to the person behind the counter in the bank, and I know then that I speak Irish in the bank. And I think a lot of people have Irish in Ireland, and what you'd call it is a bit of linguistic insecurity, where you're afraid to address yourself in Irish, you know, or address someone in Irish. And, you know, a simple Diogwit and Slán can kind of give an indication that someone might have some Irish. And you know, then I don't know, to those who are in Ireland and might have a bit of Irish and who might want to speak Irish with people but are afraid or think that there's no one around you, you'd be surprised who can. So I think realistically now, and building up to that, is trying to broaden the amount of people or grow the amount of people that can speak Irish, and to those who can speak Irish, to push them and push yourself as an Irish speaker or as an Irish learner to practice and use your language outside of, you know, your classroom or outside of your where you normally speak or learn it. So opening up different communities and different social situations where you can practice and use your language, and it spreads. So that's just a small scale idea or opinion in my you know, everyday life. But overall, I don't know, I think Siobhán said it quite well with movements from, you know, funded ideas and funded concepts, and, you know, supporting businesses in that deal with the Irish language or that trade in the Irish language, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I would love it, but bilingualism seems to be the more realistic approach. So yeah, that would be my opinion.
That's very interesting. I thought there, your how you mentioned bilingualism, because the thing is, what I was saying, I never mentioned the word bilingualism, but I kind of took it for granted that that's what would be understood as well.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's an Irish sort of approach often to languages, monolingualism. And it's also another, to be honest, in many English-speaking countries, there is this thing that you can only speak one language. And if you were to change the language you speak, you can go on and speak that language. Whereas for most countries in the world, people do speak multiple languages, at least two, perhaps not to the same level of fluency. Perhaps one mightn't be spoken as often as the other. But as you mentioned here, like English, so many people around the world can speak English to quite a good level. But in many countries, we see like people might speak one language at home and in their village, let's say, and then they go to school, they're speaking another language, and at work, they might be speaking the same language that spoke at school, or they might speak their home language. And you see that a lot across Europe, never mind the rest of the world. So definitely bilingualism. I think only the most idealist of idealists would think of Ireland becoming a monolingual Irish-speaking country, because can you even say that of any country? Can you even say that France is a monolingual country? It's the amount, how many French people do not at least speak some German or some Italian or some Spanish or some English, for example, as well as many other countries. And among young people, it's even more common. But it's been there for decades, especially across Europe. So definitely bilingualism would seem the way forward and the most practical way of dealing with things. And that was definitely one of the approaches going back 100 years ago even. I don't know if any, I suppose some people might have thought it maybe of replacing English with French or something like that, replacing with another major language, maybe not as something that the vast majority of people would be fluent in, but the people would learn at school or stuff like that. And I suppose they were thinking of trade, and it was a different sort of world we were in back then, because it was maybe before the First World War, during the First World War, politics, geopolitics, and the whole global situation was different. So, but that's a very good point you mentioned there, Emma, about like trade and stuff like that. Obviously, people would need to speak more than just Irish. Maybe not everyone would do so, and it is a very good sign of a healthy language if there are a few monolingual speakers, because I suppose some people in life, they won't need to speak anything other than the one language. But bilingualism it's something that's seen as pretty normal, I think, in most parts of the world. So that was a good point in bilingualism. And the rest that you're saying is very good as well. I agree with you, but just wanted to expand on that a bit more as well, because I agree, definitely. On what? So we'll go on to our next question there, and it's from Gaeilge in Northern Ireland, and her question is, and I'll just bring it up on the screen now. Is there any fast way to become fluent? Emma.
Well, Gaeilge, I wish I could tell you the secret. I think the fastest way would be immersion, complete immersion. So being in a Gaeltacht area, being part of a community that only conduct their daily lives through Irish. That would help speed up the process. Yeah, it would make it a bit faster for you. It all depends, of course, on yourself or on the individual that wants to become fluent quickly. Well, first of all, being fluent is different. It's subjective to everyone, I think, what they consider fluent. But if you start to live your daily life in Irish as much as you possibly can, okay, I know that you would come into contact with people who don't have Irish, so that's a bit difficult. But if you make a point of consuming your news, your social media through Irish, or in whatever language you're learning, but through Irish, reading as Gaeilge, so reading your news, reading a book, reading magazines, whatever it may be in Irish, changing your emails to Irish, changing whatever social media platform into the Irish language where possible. Facebook can, other ones can't, but you know what I mean there. And trying to speak the daily language, or the language daily, as much as you possibly can, of course, will speed up the process. So if you aren't in the position to travel to a Gaeltacht area, or become physically immersed in the language, doing the internet can help you along the way, becoming part of an online community. For example, with Bitesize, you'd have Gaeilge gach lá, Irish every day, where you'd at least conduct some part of your life, or your in that day, in Irish. So that would be my easiest way to become fluent. Another way is sit down and read every Irish book there is, but I don't think that's a feasible option for everyone, especially not for me. Practice makes perfect. So I think changing out your radio for Irish language radio, changing out your news that you might see online, changing that out for tuairisc.ie or whatever website you might use to consume news, into Irish, even though you might not understand every word. If you're reading the same kind of news, if you're reading political news every day for 2 weeks and you look up some words on Chonglan or on whatever online dictionary, those words will then become normal to you. You'll understand the next week because the same words will be used. There's repetition. So over and over and over again, Gaeilge gach lá, as we say in Bitesize Irish. That's my advice to this question. There's no easy way about it, but it's commitment. It takes commitment and time and effort, and it doesn't come easy to anyone in any language to become fluent quickly. So you really have to put in the work, and you get out what you put into it. So yeah, cad ceapan tú sa Siobhán.
Oh, definitely, you're right there. You're right, and it takes a lot of perseverance, and it definitely does. And just reading a lot, listening a lot, practically brainwashing yourself, if you want to do it quickly. So, and as you said, immersion, if you can get it, that's a great way of going about it. And that's it. And reading out loud can be very helpful as well. But that's it. Just use the language. Expose yourself to the language as often as possible. That's what I would recommend as well. But those were great recommendations there, Emma, on what her thought.
Yeah, I think it's an ongoing journey. I see Stefan there in the chat. Learning different languages takes a lifetime, and I agree there. It's a journey. I don't think that'll ever end for anyone unless it's you're a native speaker from the start and you conduct your life. I've been learning German for years. I live in Germany now, and I'm still not fluent. I learn every single day something. And I've done my exams, I've done my bachelor, I've done more and more courses, but I'm still learning. I'm still trying to consume. I'm between Irish and German, consuming news in German and in Irish, and you have to commit. And yeah, so it's a lifetime journey that everyone's on, I think, no matter what your level is. So yeah, so Eilish, perseverance, as Siobhán said, for sure.
And sure, it could even be argued that many native speakers of, let's say, English aren't that fluent at all, you could say, because so many people struggle to put their thoughts into words in a coherent, concise manner. And they've spoken English since their whole life, or some other language, let's say. So it's as you're saying, it's a bit of a fluid thing. It depends on the person, definitely. And there's some brilliant, very, very interesting comments there coming in. And I saw one person there asking about if there was some pin similar to the Pioneer pin, and there is, and it's nothing new, and it's called Anfáine. And I'll just write that up there. So it literally means the ring. So you may have seen people wearing it, like a little gold ring, usually gold. And a gold ring would show that you're fluent in Irish, an fáinne over. So there's an fáinne, you can get them online even. And if you Google an fáinne, you'll find out lots about it. And we did touch on it there a few Q&As ago. So if you go to our blog page and look back, I can't remember, I'm afraid, which month it was. Could have been July. I don't know. That's just what comes to mind. But if you look at the notes there and the blog posts and the Q&As, it was one of the recent Q&As anyway. It did go through the history even of an fáinne. But there's some very interesting points there made by different people on various topics, some very, very informative ones there. Ítach ar fad. So ítach ar fad. And an what? Mar sin. So I guess we'll move on to our next question from the survey. Or rather, I suppose next one isn't really a question, but rather a comment from Anne in Ireland. And she said, I don't have a particular question at present, but would like to thank you for your amazing work. I really enjoy tuning into the Q&A sessions. They are always so interesting. Gura míle maith agat, Anne, gura míle maith agat. So it's great to hear that you've found them interesting and helpful, I hope. So that's brilliant. And what? Martin? Okay, Kishtela Martin. So our next question from Adrian in the USA. How did you come up with this idea? I really like that it is small gains each day. Martin, and we'll fragra agat ar sin, Emma.
So gur míle maith agat, Adrian. So for anyone who's wondering, our motto or our goal with Bitesize Irish is Gaeilge gach lá, so Irish every day. So the reason behind it is that, well, our founder Owen might have extra information to add to this, but not everyone basically has the time to sit down and do an immersion course or travel to the Gaeltacht or sit down and do an online intensive course for 6 months or whatever it may be. People have lives, they have jobs, they have kids, they have families, they have other sports, hobbies, whatever it may be. Yeah. So realistically, not everyone has the chance to sit down and study for hours and hours and hours every day, unless you are studying it in school or university or whatever it may be. So that doesn't mean that people can't learn a language or can't learn Irish just because they have other things going on in their lives. So it's really to show and to encourage people to learn Irish amongst everything else that you're doing and incorporate it into their daily routine. People have routines, and adding in an extra 15 minutes, adding in an extra half an hour, whatever your routine allows you to do, will make a difference to your language skills. And it doesn't mean that you have to throw everything to the side for 6 months and say, I'm going to learn Irish now, no one else, I can't do anything else. No, it's a journey. It's a process. It's something that you can do along with your job or your kids or your family in general. So yeah, it makes little by little, these little bites every day, it's achievable. It depends it depends on the person, how much time you can dedicate. And obviously that in turn then depends on, it'll determine how fast you might progress. But, things become easier and you can go further. You can learn faster if you start off nice and slow, get into the swing of it, and you'll in no time be learning more and more vocab. Your capacity will broaden for all the world. So yeah, that would be the idea behind Gaeilge gach lá. And I think it's a great one for the average person, the normal person, not the expert or not the person who is a professor, although professors of course can too, but people that don't feel that they have the time or the attention span even to sit down and read for 6 hours or to write out sentences or do grammar or whatever it may be. So it just makes it accessible to everyone, absolutely everyone. And whatever you can put in, then that's good enough.
On Maher Fad, I agree there, exactly, that's how it is. Exactly, it's all about doing it bit by bit every day, and every little helps, as Tesco says. And it's the same for everything. If it's exercise, for example, you're much better off doing a little exercise every day instead of doing 10 hours one day of the week and half killing yourself. And it's the same with Irish. You probably wouldn't be that enthusiastic if you did a whole day studying Irish and then didn't do anything for the rest of the week, and you'd more than likely forget what you learned anyway, if you even managed to learn that much. And so trying to cram everything in such a long through such a long time, but it depends. So, but every day, that's the most important thing. And as you were saying there, Emma, vast majority of people, they have lives, basically. They don't have the time. But if you do have the time, and can make the time, even for a short amount of weeks or something, and that you could make extra time to study Irish, to get into the hang of it, and then just maybe if you had to reduce the time then because something else comes up, because you have something else to go to or something, that's great. But just to keep it regular, it has to be regular. And just bit by bit, and that's the idea here, bit by bit. That's what that's how it goes. And of course, most things that we do them daily. Most important things, and by doing it daily, you're making Irish important for yourself. So that's the thing. That's the thing. So that's why it's every day.
Well said, well said. So if you have the time, as Siobhán said, to sit down and do an intensive course and then go on with your life and keep your half an hour, your 15 minutes of Gaeilge Gach Lá, lovely. If you don't, and you start with 15 minutes and you keep 15 minutes for the rest of your life, fine. Totally fine. It depends on the learner, and it depends on what you want to and what you can do with your language and what you want to gain from it. Okay, so on Kate Keshtela, we'll move on because we have a couple more. The next one is from John in the UK. Easy question, help with pronunciation. Siobhán, give us your knowledge. Tell us.
So these are my recommendations. So there's a good few resources online, namely Chonglan.ie, and these Chonglan, for example, has recordings in the 3 major dialects of most Irish words, at least most nouns. So when it comes into verbs or something like that, it can get a bit more tricky. You mightn't be able to come across them there. But Chonglan.ie, folklore.ie, these are online dictionaries. This one also offers recordings of the words. Now, it really helps if you have a better understanding of what's going on. Why are words spelt as they are? Because surprisingly, Irish words are spelt much more phonetically than you could imagine. It's just a different form of phonetics than we use in English, as could be said for most European languages. For example, French is written differently from English, and many of the letters and in many European languages have different sounds from how they're used in English. So it's the same in Irish. It's just a different system, very phonetic, as long as you have an insight into the workings of it. So that's where I would recommend Crack Irish Pronunciation. Now, that course is part of the Bitesize courses. So to access that, you need a subscription. And I'll just add that to the screen there. So this is Crack Irish Pronunciation. So that's the course. So if you Google that and Bitesize Irish, you'll find it. And we'll also put a link in the blog post linked below that I'll update after this live stream. So that's what I would also recommend. Though that is the best course I've come across describing the workings of Irish spelling. Though you can come across it in other books and stuff, but it just focuses on that, why different groups of consonants and groups of vowels make those sounds. So it's very, very helpful. But that's the best one I know of that just focuses on that. Though I have seen some other things here and there that basically do that, but this is definitely the most comprehensive I've come across. And it also has videos so you can hear the words. It's not just describing them. And it's really, really good. Crack Irish pronunciation. So even if you just got a subscription for the 1 month just to do this course, if you wanted to, if you found that you couldn't that you couldn't have managed to keep going with the rest or whatever, even if you just did this course, it would greatly help you with your pronunciation. But also, that's just the workings of it. And also, I should say, there's another website where you'll find many words that aren't in Changlan or folklore.ie, and that is forvo.com. Now, forvo.com, you'll find, with forvo.com, you will find all these languages, every language under the sun and that. But if you spell a word in Irish, it'll come up. You don't have to specify that it's an Irish word. So if you went in and wrote Gluchthon or something, you will find it. And often there are words in there that you mightn't, as I said, you mightn't find. Maybe verbs more so and stuff like that you'll find that you wouldn't find on Changlan or folklore. So that's a great thing there. And there's another one as well, but it's more a synthesized one. Is it aber.ie?
Yeah. Yeah,
that's it. It's more synthesized, but it's very good. It's very, very good at what it does, aber.ie, so you might find that helpful as well. But as well as that, I would recommend listening to spoken Irish on radio, for example, very regularly. Again, you have to kind of brainwash yourself, and it kind of programs your mind to the different sounds of different words, and you'll pick them up. And you might find yourself picking up words and being able to pronounce them. You mightn't even know what they look like written down. So that can happen as well. But that's the great thing about listening and listening and listening. You're just hearing the language. You know how it's pronounced, like how you learned your own native language. You just, from listening, you heard people pronounce words and say words, and you just knew then. And gradually you learned how to read and stuff, and you made connections between the letters and the sounds and the words and the sounds. So it's similar to that in many ways. It's similar to that. And for example, to give a specific example in English, any native English speaker, for example, is knows the difference between well, if they use the British English spelling of plough, and they will know that plough is pronounced plough and cough is pronounced cough, even though they're spelled very similar. They didn't need to sit down and learn that, most people. We've heard it, we know it. So it's very similar to that. Just listen to spoken Irish, and that'll definitely get your brain to begin imitating the sounds of each word. So that's my opinion there.
Yeah. I agree with you, Siobhán. And just on that note, Daniel's in the chat, and Daniel has something to say, or has a question more so to do with this, and I think it just links on nicely. So, coming from outside of Ireland, I'm afraid I had no schooling in Irish, and what little Irish I speak, I do with an English accent. Do you have any recommendations for sounding more natural in Irish? And as I said, we can always say to listen to the radio stations such as Radio na Gaeilge, or listening to anything on TG Cahir, the Irish language station, but not only listening. Find videos, for example, on a site like Mulscale, which is it's kind of a spin-off, or it's a part of TG Cahir, or listen to, I don't know, whatever it may be, a podcast as Gaeilge, and mimic the people talking. I do it with my own students. Listen to a little part, you know, understand what they're saying, especially it could be handy to use one that has subtitles, pause it and mimic it. It might seem very, very silly and foolish. You might feel a bit kind of embarrassed doing it. Do it in the comfort of your own home. Do it somewhere, and don't be embarrassed in general, but I know people can be, yeah. Mimic it. Mimic it over and over and over and over and over again, and really, really focus on the sounds that maybe sound a bit more alien to you. Maybe be it a slender R or a slender L or a broad R, or whatever it might be. Mimic them. Mimic them as much as you possibly can over and over and over again, and try and say it and get a bit of, you know, get a bit of feeling behind it, and don't be afraid to act it out almost. And I think that could help as well, because listening to something is fine and dandy, and saying it again in your head is lovely. But when it comes out of your mouth, it can sound totally different. Totally different. That's why we say to read out loud in general, because people can read nice and silently and say, oh, I can pronounce that word, but if you tried to say it out loud, you might not be. So that would be my advice on that as well, to sound more Irish. But of course, don't get too hung up on it either. It comes with practice and time. It follows on. So yeah.
That's brilliant advice there. And another thing I'd like to add to that is I found that learning songs can help a lot with accents. I found that with learning a foreign language, I often find that my pronunciation when singing is 1,000 times better than if it was just to read those words out. For some strange reason, it works better. I don't know why, because you're mimicking the singer's stress of the words. I don't know, but I just find that personally. So you might find that as well. That helps you to learn a song. And again, in that way you have Irish words floating around in your head too. So even if you're not a good singer or something, you can sing to yourself, sing in the shower, whatever. And it can be very helpful in learning a language. An ceist sin Daniel go míle maithagad, an ceist fad.
Go míle Daniel. On Céad Ceistile, I'd like to ask, we're coming to the end, but we've time for a couple of quick ones. Francis in Ireland asks, in response to this survey that we sent out to those who had Irish before, Francis asked, why are you interested in my responses? So, good question, Francis. Siobhán, can you explain why you were so interested?
So why we're interested is that feedback greatly aids us in improving what we offer at Bitesize. So it's really helpful to hear from learners themselves what they're struggling with most and what they find most helpful in their attempts at learning Irish. So it's just, that's basically why. It just helps us just create better content for you, the learners, because of course we need to offer something that you want and it'll help you, not just what we think will help you. So it has to go both ways. So that's the reason why. So it's not a big conspiracy or anything.
Yeah, we're not doing anything bad with it. We just want to help you.
Mar sin an Céad Ceistile. This one is from Jim in the USA. And his question is, what steps would you suggest in order to advance from being a fluent Irish reader to a fluent Irish speaker? So that's a common problem I hear from people when they get more proficient.
Yeah, so if you want to go from, if you're saying that you're a fluent Irish reader, I would say start your transition by reading out loud and mastering, as we were talking about already, mastering how you speak and your accent or your whatever dialect you choose, and your pronunciation in general. As well as that, be it online or in person, try and interact with other Irish speakers. Of course, online, ideally you'd like to be joining an online class, an online conversation group, even so far in saying, if you got in contact with another Irish speaker, but didn't have time to do it live, voice messaging one another as Gaeilge, if you had a pen pal, a modern day pen pal, that you'd contact online via WhatsApp or Facebook chat or whatever it may be that allows you to send voice messages, that's a handy way as well to do that. I do that a lot with my friends. I like to practice my Irish you know, I'm a speaker of Irish, but I live abroad. I don't get the chance to do it every single day or as much as I would like to do it every day. So I'm on different time scales or time zones with people, and people are abroad and people have different job timings. Voice messaging, very, very handy thing to do. So if you do have contact with someone, use that to your advantage. And even if you don't fully feel comfortable in what you're saying, or you don't feel like you know every single word, that's okay. You learn from your mistakes and you can bounce off each other, you know, whatever level that learner's at or that speaker's at, you can help one another. And try and do it as fluently, or maybe off the cuff without practicing beforehand, you know, without writing out a text or anything. Try and do it as naturally as possible and see how you go and test yourself, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Siobhán,
on Walthier fad. So those are great recommendations there, definitely. So and also another thing I'd recommend is writing out conversations you can imagine having with someone. If you just met someone, let's say a stranger in a pub, just imagine the conversation you'd have with that person in your head and write it down. And you might need to write bits in English if it's something that you just have no idea how to word, and figure out how to word that in Irish. And there are great examples of normal everyday sentences on folklore.ie, and there are great examples on there. So that's what I'd recommend. And of course, if you can get your hands on an Irish speaker who can help you, better still. On Martin on Keid Kishtella. So our next question is from someone in the USA, and that person's question is, how much does it cost? So they're referring there to our subscriptions.
Yeah, so Gurmina Mahagat, that's on question. So thank you very much for that question. So we have 2 memberships at the moment, Explore and Grow. We'll have links to those in the blog post after this. So right now, Explore is $29 a month, which roughly works out at around about €25. And our Grow membership, which includes access to all of our courses that you get on Explore, plus our online Pubble community with Bitesize Bio, other live calls with myself once a month, so on and so forth. That is $39, which works in and around €34. We've been getting questions about why is it in dollars. Well, lucky for all of you who are interested outside of, you know, those countries that would use dollars, which you can still use that right now, but we're processing a new site. We're working on a new platform that will allow payment through euros, which I think a lot of people will be happy to do, because, you know, people have preferences. And of course, you can pay right now through PayPal, which does the exchange rate for you, but of course that exchange rate changes according to, you know, what way it is every day. So that's something that's coming in the future. So keep your eyes peeled on our social medias and the rest of it on our blog, and even here on YouTube. Subscribe to us if you haven't already. To those, I've often see people popping in the last 10 minutes of our live and saying, oh, I've missed most of it. If you subscribe to us, you can set a reminder, and we're live once a month, every month. And if you subscribe, you'll get the notification and you'll never miss one ever again. So yeah, that's.
And also you can watch back, of course, as well.
Yeah.
So that'll be up forever.
Absolutely.
And so that's it. Yeah, and as you mentioned, the thing about dollars, we would have had them in euros and probably even pounds, since there's so, since even a portion of Ireland uses pound sterling. We would probably have had that ages ago. But it's just sometimes with it's simply a software problem that it just can happen with whichever provider you can have. Sometimes just wants to use dollars. You can't use multiple multiple currencies, so that can be that's. But we're working on that, as Emma said there. We're working on that, and that should be
stay tuned.
Thing of the past. Oh, Martin on what? So and on William Kishton Elagin.
You know what? We'll get one more question in from the survey, and then Siobhán, while I'm reading that out, you can have a scan through the chat, perhaps, to see if there's anything that we forgot to cover or something that hasn't been answered by one another, because you're all very good in supporting each other in the chat. So Gurmila Mahagov, and we see all of you there supporting each other. So Chris in the UK says, is it possible to improve speaking Irish with little contact with Irish speakers? So that's a problem that plenty of people have. Chris is based in the UK. Of course, he might not have access to as many Irish speakers as he might in Ireland. So Siobhán, cad happen to?
On Kester Fad, Chris. So that's a great question there. So I would recommend listening to lots of people speaking Irish. So of course that would be mostly done on by listening to the radio. And so listen to the radio loads, listen to TG Cahar videos in Irish on YouTube. Simply searching Gaeilge on YouTube can help that. But also writing a lot, such as keeping a diary and, as I mentioned before, creating your own conversation scripts. So imagining conversation in your head in different situations and circumstances, just writing different scripts there. And that in that way, you won't have to think up common answers to questions, let's say, or common topics on your feet. You'll already have the basic thing written out and practiced already. So if you are having a conversation in person, then you'll have that in the back of your mind. And even if you have to change the sentence up a bit, you have the basic template, let's say, of the conversation already there. And that can help you get the confidence to speak more and more and learn from there. And you could even go as far as writing a play if you wanted to, as there's loads of conversation there. So you might find that fun, writing a play, or maybe even you could imagine a conversation between two people you know or something, just write in Irish. There's loads of opportunities to practice. And even if you don't get to speaking to Irish speakers online, perhaps you could be a pen pal, sort of modern pen pal, as Emma said there, with a learner who's more proficient than you. So even if they're not maybe fluent speakers. So that's the thing. There is a lack of language exchange opportunities in Irish compared to many other languages, simply due to the fact that, well, I suppose most Irish speakers, fluent Irish speakers, are English speakers, and there's nothing really to exchange because most people are learning Irish already, speak English, so there's nothing really to exchange there. Whereas if the person was, let's say, French and they wanted to learn Irish and the Irish speaker wanted to learn French, then, but it's just that's just the way it is. That's why there are so few language exchange opportunities compared to many other languages. And I saw a person in the comments there mentioning how they learned Russian through looking at memes and stuff. And that's the thing, when a language is spoken by more than well over 100 million people, as is the case with Russian, you're going to have tons of memes that will appeal to different people. You're going to have tons of content that you can easily digest and thereby practice daily. So with minimal effort even. So that's the thing with Irish being a minority language, you don't have as much, but it's still there. There's still memes in Irish. There's Irish Twitter. There's different groups on Facebook, and you can find ones where it's all fluent Irish speakers. For example, Gaeilge One, that particular group, they're all fluent Irish speakers. So you see memes in Irish, people talking about different things in Irish, different topics, a very general conversation, both on light and heavy topics. So it's there. It's just on such a small scale compared to other languages. So that's what I think there. But just listening, writing, speaking if you can. And even just if you find it too hard to speak because of pronunciation or something, text message style, like DMing, that sort of thing, just messaging back and forth between someone, that can get your confidence up to actually speak. Then maybe after a while have a Zoom call with that person after conversing in the written form first. So that's what I'd recommend.
Yeah, in team lat. And with the diary, just a short comment, even if you write the diary out, video yourself on your phone or on your laptop, read out that diary, to your diary, as Gaeilge, and you'll then have a log of your progression. And you could look back in 6 months' time. And even if you don't do it every day, once a month, once a week, once a month, and you can look back and look at yourself this time last year and see how far you've come. So that's a nice idea to start. Start and see how you go. And you look back, and even sometimes you get everybody gets that bit of insecurity. I'm not learning, I'm not progressing, I'm the same level as I was a year ago. You're probably not. You're just being too hard on yourself. So, doing that via video is a really, really good resource for you for later then, and it'll give you a little bit of an ego boost to keep going and keep pushing. So yeah, Gahuntach Siobhán in team lat, very good recommendations there. So I think that's it. I think that's all we can get to in Nuv. Cad chiapan tú Siobhán?
Oh, sin é stocha tá ciste bháin on the trachtna. So just one question here from the comments I think we could address quickly. And that's, can you use the words siúr and bráthar interchangeably with drahar and drifor to describe siblings, or are those words exclusively for the religious titles? So they're not just for religious titles. Now, you can't use them interchangeably with drahar and drifor. Siúr and bráthar, they can be just religious titles for, as in like a religious sister, religious brother, but also in like a brotherhood, that sort of thing. I suppose it's a bit different, but like sisters, you'd hear about sisterhoods and brotherhoods, and they're not religious organizations. So in that sense, you could use them as well, but only when you're calling someone brother or sister and they're not your biological brother or sister. So that's basically when you'd use siúr and bráthar. So they're just special words for when someone isn't your actual brother or sister.
Gahuntach. The last question that just comes in there from John Cook in the chat. I would like something better than the language app Duolingo for Irish exposure. A children's book in Irish. I like children's stories in English, so that would be natural. I would suggest leilat.com. It has a collection of Irish language kids' books and stories, and poems with a corresponding audio file that goes with them all. So leilat.com or leinish.com. And they were quite recently set up during COVID-19 to support those who couldn't go, kids couldn't go to school. This was set up and it's absolutely brilliant. And I really would recommend it to anyone who would like to read along, see the words and listen to the vocabulary at the same time. And we mentioned this quite a lot. So yeah, agus gur míle maith agat Brian Freshen.
It's a great channel.
Yeah. Channel. So the resources are there, and this is why we are here as well, to help you and to make you aware of them. So we always welcome extra comments when the live is over underneath the video itself. Subscribe next time so you can get involved in the chat on time and see us live here. Yeah, sin gur míle maith agah galéir, gur míle maith agat sa Siobhán.
Gur míle maith agat hain, Emma. Ionach ar fad one me hain ansultas Reno. So I greatly enjoyed it, and it was great to have you all with us this evening, and I hope you learned at least something new or found some encouragement in this evening's live stream. Gur míle maith agaí ar fad. Slán go fóilia.
Slán.
An tamil.